In this video, I'm going to show you how to create realistic shadows inside of Photoshop and also start understanding why we need to use smart object and also smart filters inside Photoshop. This section is going to pack a lot of very useful information for you editing. So as you can see here, we have a raw renders directly come from the Blender, and this is what we have after did our editing. It might seem very subtle. However, there's a lot of things being changed, and we actually elevated all the details for your render to another level. So if we zoom in and do a quick comparison before and after, you can see before, and this is what after. So there are a lot of subtle changes or editings inside these images. That's what actually make these images very pop and more professional. Let me explain why we need to recreate shadows and how to use smart object and filters. Okay, let's get started. So first, we are going to need to do some preparation inside Blender. Because we have a lot of control inside Blender, of course, we want to generating the best quality render we can possibly do inside Blender first. Then we want to load in this image inside of Photoshop, then to do the further advanced post-processing. And as you can see here, already have a scene build. All the lighting and the materials already been made. By the way, you will have the access in this Blender file in the support file folder, so no worry about it. One thing in here in the Blender, we really have hard time to generating a pure white environment. So as you can see here, the rain is been sitting on the ground. That's what I called, and the ground shaders are like this. If I'm typing in the base color, I'm actually put it all the way to the brightest I can possibly go, but on the render image, it still looks a little bit grayish. It's not pure white. If you're a product photographer or designers, you know a lot of catalog images for products need to be on pure white. It's just more like a standardized images for a lot of platform. Since we cannot really getting everything into pure white, then we need to do some work in the Photoshop. So this is one thing we need to conquer in the post-processing. So what I need to do next is we are going to generating some smart masks. Right now, you can definitely see we can just hit F12 and then to generating a image over here. So I already did this. So this is the render we have. The next thing you need to do here is you're gonna go to the slot number 2 or 3, whatever works. Since I already made the mask for you, so I just want to go to the slot number 3. This is an empty one. So what I will do next, I'm just temporarily move this one to the other monitor. I'm going to go to the render engine, change the engine to workbench. So everything is going to be looks very weird. This is not what we want. But the point is using this render engine is really quick and fast because we only need to highlight the areas that we want to use for a mask. So what we need to do here, we are going to actually close everything in this folder and making sure your background is transparent. You need to go to the render property settings and then scrolling down, making sure you're under the film, you check the transparent. If you don't do so, you can see here, we have some content in here. In default, this is gonna fill some color into there. So we want to making sure we hit the transparent, making sure this is not being rendered. Next, we're going to come back to the render view and hit F12 again. Watch what's gonna happen. It's gonna instantly generating a mask for you. What you're gonna do here, you're gonna go back to the slot number 1. You're just going to save as a typical TIFF file, and for this particular renders for this particular mask right here, we're showing you're gonna save this as PNG file. So we're gonna image, save as, and you need making sure save as PNG file. Since I already saved it, so I don't need to do it again, but this is how you do this. Okay, now we'll come back to the Photoshop. We are going to open the render image. I hit open and find the render that we actually generating from Blender. Hit that and hit open. What I'm going to do next is a couple quick steps to convert this image into the color to be the exact one we are rendered inside Blender. I have a designated video talking about this color management process in a separate videos. You will be able to watch that in the later of this chapter, but I'm just going to go through the process how I'm quickly adding this one follow the procedures, and you will understand why I'm doing this after you watch that videos later in the chapter. First thing, I'm gonna go to the edit and come down here to color settings. I'm going to change the sRGB to the monitor RGB and hit OK. And then I'm gonna go to the edit again, come here to convert profile from this one to the sRGB. So you probably have a different profile, but that's going to be your monitor profile. So it doesn't really matter on my name how to spell this, but I want to come back to the sRGB. Hit OK. And now it's going to go back to editing again and convert color settings, come back to the sRGB. Now we are good to go. So we can start editing these images, and this is what it looks like when we're trying to generating inside Blender, all the colors being correct. I think we want to do is we want to separating the subject, shadows, and the background. So when you see an image, you want to having full control of all of these elements. So the subject, the shadow, and the background. You may ask, why do we need to do this? Simply because we are doing commercial images to serve a particular purpose for the companies, for the brand, and a lot of times the designers need to have a lot of room to manipulating and doing things around in order to getting the message out according to the brand images. As a professional image creator, we need to have some basic ideas about how other professional creatives going to use your images and how they work with around this. Because after you create one of your work, you want to be displayed and used in the best way possible. It also means we need to save some rooms and getting more controls when we're actually editing the image, not for us and also for the usage for the companies. This is a very valuable and important principles when you're creating your work for commercial works. What we need to do next, as you may already know, that we're already generating the smart mask, so we are going to loading the mask and quickly cutting the thing out. Remember, if you don't have this type of mask, you're going to use a pen tools or any other method to get anything out. But we are Blender artists, we have a huge advantage to generating masks so quickly, so we save a lot of time to click path all this thing. Next thing, go to the file, and then we're gonna go place embedded, and then we're gonna find the PNG file, which is going to be our mask. Double click to load it in. So you can see here, the mask is not perfectly placed the way it's supposed to be. It is because we are currently zoom in on our viewport in these areas. And the Photoshop doesn't really know what to do, so they just simply put everything into the viewport in the center. This is something that you're going to see this and very often, so I want to explain this in this video as well. What do we need to do next? Again, click this layer, hit the backspace key, just delete that, and zoom out, making sure the entire frame is inside the viewport. Then go to the file again and scrolling down, place embedded, and now we select it one more time. Boom. So is everything in the center, is the way it's supposed to be. You can see here, this is what we're gonna get. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to hit Control and the left click. And now the selection is being activated. And then we are going to click this image layer and come down here and adding a mask. Click, and then we have a mask down here. Well, you may say, well, why I don't see this? Oh, it's because we still have this mask on the top of the image. So what we need to do, we can either close it, or we can just simply left click and drag, make it below this. And this is all gone. We don't need it using this anymore, so we can temporarily close that. And now you can see here, everything's been cut out. I know, but it's time to adding a white background. So remember what kind of the adjustment layers that we're going to use for the white background. Yes, correct. That's going to be the solid color. Click that, and we're going to choose a color right here. Hit OK, and it's perfectly placed down below the subject layer. Okay. Now this thing looks very fake, simply because we don't have shadows, right? It looks very weird without shadows. Everything just looks, yeah, all right. And although the background has been pure white, but still not really that professional look. Now let's creating the shadow. You may think, well, Wenbo, why do we need creating shadow? The simple reason is that if we are going to having full control of shadows, we can expand this backgrounds anywhere, how big, whatever. We can place this subject with shadow to any white backgrounds or different color background if you want to do. That's why having a shadow creating it is very nice. And the stuff we generating from the Blender is only creating the shadow based on a kind of like very light gray color background. It's not very universally usable for the design works for other purpose. We want to creating a shadow. It looks very similar to this light quality, but it can be possibly to place into a various environment. Then we are going to creating a shadow based on the shape of the existing ring. We're going to do control click one more time, activating the selection. We are going to adding a new layer up here, and we're going to fill this selection with a color. We are going to use a quick shortcut key, Alt Delete, and this is talking about to fill a color for the foreground. If you want to fill this selection in white color, you can hit X to kind of reverse this. You can hit Alt Delete or Alt Backspace. That works exactly the same. That's what we need to do. But in this case, we need to use the black. So hit X to come back, Alt Backspace. So this is what we have here. The next thing we're going to do is going to deactivate the selection by hitting Control D. All these shortcuts, I know, but that's just the way it is, how professional use. All you need to do is just remember all these simple shortcuts. It's gonna get you work way faster than anybody else. So Control D to deselect everything, and we are going to move this layer below the subject. I know it's everything being covered. So next thing we're going to do here, we're going to hit Control T to activate the transform tool. Then we can actually start manipulating the shapes, everything. Okay, so if I'm left click and drag, you see this is hidden in the back. So next thing we're going to do here, we're going to do right click. You can see all these transformations that we can do for that. What we need to do, you can just flip horizontally and holding shift while you click and drag, which means it's gonna go directly straight line, and you can do so. And then when you move your cursor over here, you can see there's arrows change. We can just kind of rotate it the way it is. We can just generally positioning this thing around here, and just kind of some ideas, think about this is what's going to look like. And next thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to make sure, okay, let's go with the transformation, and then hit Z and click drag. We can just dragging to see a little bit bigger on this edge, and I hit the Control T again. So I'm going to kind of change the perspective a little bit, because the shadow probably not going to directly look like this, and we can do a little bit manipulation. Hit a Control and the left click. You see, we can just change the perspective a tiny bit, and the actual shadow is not going to see all these sharp lines, because that's so unrealistic, and we are not really working under that harsh shadow. But I just want to having some kind of bending going on here to getting the shape looks very similar to a very soft light shadow. Okay, so I can hit enter and confirm that. The next concept I'm going to introduce is called smart object. If you pay attention, in the previous chapter we have talked about all these colors and images were consisted with pixels, and each pixel is kind of like a tiny square, and we are actually putting them together and creating some very complex shapes and color and tones in here. The differences between the vector file compared to the image file is because vector file doesn't really lose the quality when they're scaled up and down. That's where a lot of logos and the graphic designers are working inside Illustrator, because it's working with a vector-based file. I know if you're really not nerd for the images, but what I'm trying to tell you is that the reason we wanted to change a layer and smart object is trying to reserve all the informations without really losing them after doing any scaling and transformation. I'm going to right click and then go to here, convert to smart object. And now you can see here suddenly we have tiny thing, 5 icons in here. This means it's a smart object. So we've done our job. The next thing, we're going to do some filters in order to get this shadow looks more realistic. We are trying to blur it out. So definitely we need to apply some blur filter in order to make this shadow looks very photorealistic. Another reason we are using the smart object is because we also want to creating smart filters. So if I'm holding Alt Z to not convert this to smart object, I'm gonna duplicate it by holding Alt and drag. So I'm just having this is not a smart object. I can do this one more time, right click and convert to the smart object. If we go to the filter, as you can see here, we have so many filters we can use and do. And again, the whole purpose of this video is not trying to overwhelm you for the Photoshop. There are only a couple filters I've used very often, and I'm actually using a blur, the Gaussian blur, and some motion blur. Sometimes, remember, you will have some motion blurs going on inside Blender when you're generating some scenes, and we can definitely do that. Gaussian blur is another one. This time for our videos, we are going to go to the blur galleries and go to the iris blur. Okay, click that. Now you can see we are inside of different layouts, and you can see we have a circle going on here. We can actually changing the intensity of the blur and also getting the different shape and the center of the blur accordingly, just dragging this thing. See, that's very interesting, and actually have quite a bit control to really see, okay, making your shadow looks more realistic. And we can just dragging this thing, click and drag, positioning the way you want to go. So if you want more intense, you're just going to drag in that, less intense like this. So this is where you're going to spend some time to really perfecting it, to make it looks the way that you want to go. And we can just definitely do this type of thing. I'm not going to spend a lot of time to redo this again, but this is how to get done. After I doing this, I'm just gonna come here to hit OK. There are tons of settings that you can do, but for me, all these settings around here is already enough. Again, do not overwhelm yourself by learning the tool. The whole purpose of this course is to learning the exact things you will be used as a Blender artist. If you have more spare time, of course, you learn it yourself. Hit OK, and then we're done for this blur gallery. Is going to process a little bit. Now it's done. So the same thing gonna happen is, well, what if Wenbo, if I don't like this blur, I need to do a more adjustment. You can just easily double click that. You can do adjustment already right here. So you can just do a little bit of things around here and hit OK one more time. And this filter is going to stay in here. If I'm not converted this layer into smart object, I don't have this possibility to go back. So I have to recreating this layer to do the filter one more time. It's just wasting a lot of time. So if I show you here and click that, this is layer is not a smart object. If I go to here, layer, because I did the layer, so I can just recall this action, click that, it actually having this, right? So you can have similar effect just like the one we haven't done here, but we don't have anything to readjusting the layer filter. That's why we need to convert this layer to smart object and use this feature. Okay, now you get it. And I'm gonna hit backspace to delete that. So we're going to start working on some modification generating shadows for our product. I know it still looks very fake. It's very strong and intense. Now what we need to do next, we are going to using a layer mask or to creating some gradients to kind of get rid of this black part, because the real shadow is actually going to fall very small amount around this areas. You don't need the entire thing, but in order generating some good shadows, this is really good way to start with. Here comes to the smart way to using a layer mask. And as we can do here, we can just simply click a layer mask, and we can hit G to activate the gradient tool, and I can just drag the thing and moving here, right? I can generally slowly get anything filled. The reason I have this effect when you can slowly do this is because I set the opacity to 10. If I'm hitting the opacity to 100, and this is going to have a different look. If I'm holding this again, shift and drag, You see this is having a very strong transitions over here. You can see that. So this is something I don't like. I want to slowly generating the gradients in order to make the shadow transitioning very nice and smooth. So what I would do here is I need to change this opacity to 10 and right click to delete the layer mask and do it again. Okay, hit that, adding a brand new layer mask, hit the gradient tool, so hit shift and drag. The reason holding shift is dragging this thing for a 45 degrees. You don't have to do so, but you can just kind of release the shift and doing the same thing again. So this is going to how it works, and I typically dragging a little over to the areas that I want to go. So I can go with this, right? So you can just play with it. So I think this looks okay. And what I will need to do next, I'm going to change the opacity of the shadow, make the shadow density is a little bit lighter because right now it's still pretty intense. So what I can do here is select this thing and go to the opacity. We can just dial it down to like 50%. Okay, this is 5%. We're going to do 50, one more. So 50%. And that looks nice, and I can even do just keep here the dragging here. You can see when I'm dragging things here, you can actually change the opacity very easily. And another way I really love to do is when you select this layer, you hit the V key and then you activate the move tool. Now you can just simply type the numbers. If I'm hitting 1, you can change the opacity to 10%, 20%, and 40%. If you have 1, that's going to be 10%, 20%, okay, 30%, 50%. You can quickly just do that by clicking different numbers in here. If I'm hitting the number very quickly, hit 6, 7 really quick, that would be 67%. So that's just one trick that I like to use very a lot. And now you can see we have something going on here. And I like the shadow density around like 40, I think 40 is nice. Let's do 40. 40 is nice, but I don't like the shape down here. I have some residues over here for the shadows, and I already have a layer mask, and I don't want to ruin this gradient layer mask. And how can we do that? Adding another mask. Now you're coming with the group folder. We can just creating a group and drag anything in, and adding another layer mask on the group folders. Now we can do it again and hit the B key. And remember, this is going to be the brush that we can paint our layer mask for the folder. This time I'm going to hit X to make it black, and I'm just going to gently do that. And sometimes if you still feel this is a little bit harsh, you can change the flow to 10% and just kind of slowly getting refined. So in this way, it's actually getting really good result out of it. And then it looks very nice and settled. If you don't like this intensity of the shadow, you can actually bump it up. Come back and hit the V key to select the move tool, hit 5, 6, whatever you can do. So now if you increase the intensity, you can see, oh, there is some residue down here. So I can select that layer mask, hit V2, and getting that done. Very, very subtle, but it's very effective. And now you can see we have a group, it's called shadow. Double click, and we can rename that shadow. Now we have a separate items for the shadow. Of course, you want to refine the shadow, you can definitely do so. It's just kind of getting something work done. So I'm not doing this for too long because for the purpose of this video, I'm going to show you the process. Now we have the subject, we have the shadow. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to introduce good noise and sharpening the image to continue elevate the quality of this render. I'll see you in the next one.